cool. I'm impressed.
That's my missus singing, and anyway, that's.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Very talented missus you got there.
Oh, thank you, man. She'd be very pleased. She's a huge fan. She's downstairs painting some furniture. Listen, I'll tell you what I wanted to do, if you don't mind. I'm sure you've heard this a million times, but, and I'm not, I deliberated over this, but I've got to say what I planned to say to you in the first place, which is that Frampton Comes Alive is one of the absolute cores of how I process music and why I'm a pro muso.
Wow.
Just those songs you sing and that guitar play. Something occurred to me today. I've been checking out these solos. There's a good book of transcriptions, and there's some things I transcribe. I've transcribed some stuff from your blues album as well. But in looking at the stuff from Frampton Comes Alive, there's a lot of stuff. I've got loads of notes here about things I've clocked in it. I want to get to it somewhat into, how you arrived at that approach. I mean, I'm 60% of the way through your book, so that's, I know some of the story.
Right.
But only today, it just occurred to me, because I'm so dense. Hang on a minute. This is a live album. It's like, man, this is live. This guy was so on all the time in that performance that this is a live, and every one of those solos, bang, it's just amazing. I mean, that presence of mind it just hit me. It's like Frampton Comes Alive. All of my mates when I was a kid, we used to go around each other's rooms and just listen to this album over and over. So it's something that's sort of ingrained. You don't really. Mm-hmm. It's just this monolith, this creation, But you did that live. That's so devastating. I mean, you must have been so on at that time. I know you found a great band there, and you said lovely things about those guys. But you hadn't been playing with those guys very long by that point, had you?
That formation had the bass. The three of us have been playing together for a year,
right?
Maybe two. Bob Mayo, John Sayomis, and myself have been together. And then bass players switched out. Andy Bound left, and then we got in Stanley Sheldon. Yeah. So Stanley had only been in the band maybe 3 months when we did that recording,
Yeah.
So because that was July, and we probably started in, I don't know, March, touring that year in 75. Not sure about that month, but yeah. So it was, but he molded so well very quickly, And Bob and I were more like one person, in as much as, well, I give him the credit, not me, that he was his musicality was at such a level that he would change his voicings behind me to follow my solo, because they were always different. People say, well, why don't you do the same solo you did on? I said, let me explain to you. I said, I've never played the same solo twice. Yes, they're similar, but they're never the same. I would hate that. Yeah. And so, the night that we chose for, which was the Winterland night, which was the latest show of those 3 shows we did in San Francisco Bay area, well, basically, the night before was different. The night after was totally different. So that is the one that made it on the record, and everybody wanted to hear that. But I still didn't do this. I don't remember, and I'm not going to learn my own solos, but I've never been too much of a pre-planner. It's always been moment of consciousness. It's just whatever comes out. I don't want to think. It's like, in the studio, it becomes harder for me because I want it to be, and usually I do it in the first or second take, or, in the studio, I would do like 4 runs, maybe 2 or 3, 4 at the most, go have a cup of coffee, make a phone call, do an email, come back, and then do 3 or 4 more. And between those, I've got it. But live, it's got to be that's it.
Yeah.
It's beginning to end of that. As soon as you start that song, there's no going back, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I think I like the danger more than anything, because I can go places, because if I make a mistake, I might have found another lick because of the mistake I made, you know. So there's no mistakes really.
Yeah.
You know, when you're a semitone from Nirvana, that can be a little bit. If you're playing a minor against a major, that's woo-wee. But or vice versa. Yes, I understand that. But basically, you know, through my listening to jazz most of my life, as well as blues, you know, and in both spheres, there's mistakes you hear, but it's what he played before, she played before or afterwards, that it doesn't matter about that. It was to get to this point here. And then it was like, holy crap, that is such a great line or whatever. You know? So there's no mistakes really, or they're there for a reason, you know? And if I worked out my solos and played them every night, note for note, well, I would not be a live player if I had to do that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the rhythms you play, the stuff I've transcribed, the rhythms you play, that would, I mean, it just seems so organic, and some was very, I mean, you see it written down. I mean, there was a bit of swearing this morning. I was transcribing, what was I doing? I was finishing off, I did She Caught the Katy from your book.
Oh, I love that.
Love it. I absolutely love it. There's that crazy alternate picking, tremolo picking thing. There was a bit of swearing in my house this morning when I was transcribing that, but
sorry.
No, not at all. It's an education. I love that album. I'm probably going to take all that down. I looked at all blues as well. I'll say this while I remember it. When I took that down, I shouted down to my wife, there are 2 solos on this. I know I have an idea how humble you are, and I have an idea how you're going to receive this. Not that I know you in any way, but there are 2 solos, and I shouted down to my wife, there are 2 solos on this track, and I don't know which one is Larry Colton. I just don't know. That's something, because he's a god amongst changes played. It's amazing, the solo. But in looking at this stuff, you've talked about the jazz influence. You've been into jazz since you were a young kid, and you often talked about Kenny Burrell. Yeah. And I looked at this solo. If you don't mind me just having a look at this thing. In this solo you do on All Blues, I'll murder it for you. Right, this bit. Right, so this sort of C7, right? So you got this lick over C7s. Basically, what the point, without going into any detail, you're playing a persistent like F triad of a C, and I thought that reminds me of Wes. So I had to go looking. Wes Montgomery, right? This is on a blues solo. Wes plays on I think it's a Duke Ellington tune called Blue and Boogie. He plays this lick over 2-5-1 in F, and he plays. So over the C he plays an F triad. I thought, that's it. That's exactly the track that Peter's solo made me think of. So that's in what you do. Apart from the fact you've got this wild lick on G7, starting on E flat. You've got some ears, man. That's terrifying. It's so beautiful. So it made me think, you must have. I mean, people often say they listen to jazz, but there's a difference between listening to jazz and really having the phrasing, like when Wes plays. It sounds to me like you just got all this stuff. It's in what you do, and that really caught me, that F triad thing.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? A lot of people talk a good game with jazz, but this is it's beautiful, this solo.
And so Rick Beato did a wonderful little video with me, and he is the nicest guy, and he scares me to death because he can play like me when he wants to. Well, not quite, but but I mean, he is like you. It's the same thing. You've taken it, you've digested it, you've written it down, and then the thing is, then he said, did you know that did you feel that this mode that you were going to from here to here? I said, Rick, I don't know what modes I'm playing in. I don't want to know what I'm playing. Is that okay? It's like, if I know what I'm playing, then that means I'm thinking about it.
Yes.
And I don't want to think. I want to go into a space where there's it's just a void.
Yeah.
And all I'm going to do is fill it, and I don't want to know what it was that I played yesterday, and I don't want to listen to what I played yesterday. I'll listen to somebody else, but I won't listen to me, because I want to, every day I want to be able to go somewhere a little different,
Yeah. I mean, the science, I mean, I actually did classical music at college, and I've studied the Berkeley method, and I teach at a college when I'm not
I wish I could have time to have some lessons. Actually,
well,
we might have to do this.
Oh man, if you, I can teach you all the stuff that you already know. But anyway, I mean,
it's the chords. It's those lovely 3 chords you just did, and I'm more into just the melodic side of it. And I'm lax on the chords a little bit, so that's where I need some help.
Man, with your ears, you think of like a 2-5-1 in G. If you just, when you come to the 5 chord, as soon as you start messing on with, all you do is put in the core chord down and put the extension on the top, and all of a sudden it starts to smell like Joe Pass. It's like, anyway, I no, seriously. Give me a break. But Wes Montgomery, I think, when he started, got a gig with a big band replicating, was this somebody like Lionel Hampton? So replicating Charlie Christian's solos. So he learned with a record player back and forth, and he replicated the solos. And then, because he's a smart guy and a brilliant natural musician, over time he'd try things out, and the piano player in the band would say, you could try these notes, they work over that, and so he gradually added to the palette of stuff, and then he's just off and running improvising. That's miles from being a sort of college trained guy. I think there's you put it in a nutshell. Overthinking is never going to fly, really. I remember talking to Albert Lee. Lee did a workshop for me at a college I used to teach at, and he's matey with a friend of mine. He was in the Everly Brothers band with a British bass player.
Oh yes. And
Albert was talking about things, I didn't want to really talk about theory with him because I didn't want it to be an influence. It's like something he didn't know. But I thought, you have to process this stuff because he plays all the great notes. He's so amazing.
Oh yeah.
But it was interesting to hear him talking. He said, that kind of line where you're the 6, the flat 6, and the 5. I thought, okay, you don't give it a name, but that's how your code. It's a thing. You might think, it's like that lick off that record or whatever. As long as you have it in your ears, that's all that matters, isn't it, really? So I wish I'd learned your way, but
no, it's I mean, I did, when my parents saw that by the time I was 11 or 12, and they saw that this was getting very dangerous, that it looked like that I was going to actually possibly be doing this for a living, And my father being a teacher, it wasn't a thrilling event for him, the thought of it, So, but anyway, I forgot where I was going there, but yeah, it's just, I went to, so they sent me to Miss Susan Graham in Bromley South, and above Bromley South Station there, I went every week for about a year and maybe a little bit more. Hated every moment of it, doing classical, But you know what? It taught me so much.
Yeah.
I mean, I hated it at the time, but it taught me the rudiments, what's up here, that's all, and it was very helpful. But that's the only, maybe 2 or 3 years I did, but that's all the training I had. But it was necessary, I think, to at least have that rudimentary thing. But then basically it was back to the albums and listening and putting things on 16 instead of 33. And because it goes to an octave below. And you could
I remember that myself. Yeah.
And you could listen to Wes's chord solos at half speed, you know.
Yes.
It was great.
Yeah. Oh man, fantastic. See, you've led me to another question I wanted to ask you in terms of how you learned. I remember a friend of mine who's sort of, he's a little bit young. He's like 10 years younger than you, this guy. And he played with Clapton. So I should say Eric Clapton. And this guy was telling me when he was a kid, he's from Scotland, this guy, and he was telling me when he was a kid, he said little units of things would be picked apart on Clapton records or Albert King records. Could be all those things, you know, all those little blues sort of like cliche ideas. So one thing I'm not sure I can quite crystallize what I want to ask you, but I'm going to try. Listening to you play and having read just over half of your book, you were such a young kid when you really took off. How did you learn all the language? How did you get all those lines together? How did you conceive of it, really? So when you were listening to records, how did you get to this point where you had all that stuff under the hood where you could hang with these older musicians? And you know, he's so young to be that mature, to be playing with great players.
I blame Tony Chapman, who was the original drummer of the Rolling Stones. And when he left, he had already introduced Bill as the bass player. So he had brought Bill in to the Stones. And of course, then Charlie took over. Charlie was hired instead. So Bill always thought, you know, he owed Tony big time. And so that's how the Preachers evolved. He said, go form a band, go get a band together, semi-pro band, and I'll produce you. We'll make a record. So anyway, I'm working in this shop in Beckenham, Robertson's. And it was you could buy a Hoover, or you could go upstairs into the music department and buy a Gretsch, you know. So
what sort of choice is that?
Yeah. So I worked upstairs with David Hadfield, who was, but get this, was the original drummer of the Shadows. Wow. So, and worked for Cliff before the Shadows, I believe. So anyway, I knew Dave, and Dave was a recording nut too. So he had a little recording studio in there in the shop. But basically, I worked every Saturday because I wasn't old enough to work, you know. But I worked there cleaning, changing the strings, and then all the local musicians would come in, and we'd jam, you know. And then one day, Tony Chapman came in, and he wanted some sticks, and he said, "Look, I've heard about you." He said, "You know, I'm forming this band, and I'd like you to play guitar." And I said, "Oh, you're kidding me." He said, "How are you with working on weekends?" I said, "Okay, but my dad's a teacher, so Sunday night might be a problem." In the end, I played most Sunday nights. But so he said, "Okay, well, if you're up for it, come over. I'm going to give you a bunch of albums. And I want you to learn. I'll give you some tracks to learn, but I want you to listen to all this." So it was everything from Otis Redding's biggest album, obviously, to Roland Kirk,
wow,
to Kenny Burrell, Jimmy Smith, and then all the jazz organ players, Jack McDuff, with a very, very, very young George Benson playing with the Jack McDuff trio before he branched out, you know. So I've got everything, and Stones records. And so I've got just about the run of every type of music apart from country and Western at that point. I've got to learn this by Tuesday. So, so it was major, and I'm still at school and I had homework. So within 5 days, I had to get a handle on all this stuff. And when I heard Kenny Burrell play with the big band, and then his beautiful sound, and then of course Wes Montgomery, and it just opened up Joe Pass, Grant Green, all these incredible melodic players. And because I was brought up with the Shadows music, Hank's wonderful playing, dear Hank, my friend. Yeah. It's so wonderful to say that. But he's a true friend, and we send each other new stuff, and it's so great. And so he was responsible for me, starting to play. And as soon as the Shadows came out, after Lonnie Donegan, and then I went from Lonnie Donegan to Hank Marvin, and oh my God, and then Eddie Cochran, Buddy Hall, it just doesn't stop from then on, with all that side of it. But meanwhile, on Saturday mornings, Mom and Dad, before I even got up, the Hot Club de France was playing down in the living room, so, which I hated to start with. And then I couldn't leave the room because it was just so, I suddenly realized, well, it's not a Stratocaster and it's not electric, but what the hell is he doing? This guy is amazing. And then I'd hear one of those from the E string there to the 20th fret, or however many he had on the Macafari, 19 or 17, whatever. He'd go bring, and I go, yeah. oh, wait a second. I'll never be able to play like this guy, so I want to listen to him all the time.
Yeah.
So he's been my, if I get bored with other players, on goes Django.
Yeah.
And it's the early stuff too. Yeah. It's the 40s stuff.
I heard a story when I was a kid that you had bought Django's guitar. Is that true?
I didn't buy it. I met through Jerry Moss, the record company that A&M distributed through was owned by Django's producer. And I'm sorry, I can't remember his name right now. And it was on his label. Django was on his label. So Jerry Moss had told him that I was a massive Django freak, So he came to Los Angeles, and we had lunch, the three of us. And then at the end of the meal, he brings out this old case, and it's a tenor Macafari Selma with the D hole. And I freaked out. He said, this is Django's, bus guitar. This is one of the ones he would play in his caravan, He said, you're kidding me. He said, no, Django played this. And so I have one of Django's, it's not a 6-string.
Yeah.
But I have I have that locked away.
That's wonderful. Fantastic. Yeah. Quite right too. Brilliant. Man, that's it's funny how things seep in, isn't it? Like the yes. influences seep in.
And now I found John Jorgensen, my dear friend, wonderful. Sometimes I think he is Django when he plays, but he told me about the DuPont from France. And so I bought me a top of the line DuPont, and when I play along with the slow parts with me and Django, when I play along with the record, it's like it's double tracking, because I've got the big thick pick, and I worked out where to play here, over the hole or back by the bridge, and those different sounds, so many sounds he got out of one guitar, So I go, and then I start laughing when he goes off, and then I go, okay, and then I just start listening again. But it's beautiful to have a guitar that sounds, I can almost sound like him. I can't play like him, but I can sound like him.
Yeah, that's a big part of it, isn't it? The sound.
Yes. Oh, it's a huge part. I mean, I thought, because it's actually it's an acoustic that distorts. Yeah. It's actually got air around it. You can make a dirty sound out of that guitar. And he's bending notes, one of the very early on,
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
Oh man, that's fantastic. Can I ask you this question? There's a lick in "Do You Feel Like I Do?" I should have practiced this before I troubled you.
Oh, no.
But anyway. Well, that's the thing. So that's like a sweep. Now, I don't know if you just, and then after it goes, it's one of those things, but
right.
do this sweep, and that makes me feel, it reminds me of, I'm not saying you ripped him off, so please don't be insulted by this.
No.
You know Jimmy Page? And there's another thing in "Lines on My Face." I think it's partly because of the chord sequence that reminds me of Dave Gilmour. Now, I'm not asking you what you might think I'm asking, which is, did you rip those guys off? Because I don't think you did. But there's must be something in the water. Just reading this book, you and Dave Gilmour and all those guys of that generation, there must have been influences that you guys checked out. So that, like a bit of cross-pollination between you.
Yes, I agree.
And also things in your ears. So would it be like that minor key, kind of like flats, Aeolian, I guess it is.
Yeah.
Is that a bit of a Peter Green influence, do you think? Do you think that's part? Because Peter Green was so good at playing a minor key.
Yes. I don't know whether, I listen to all of them, all of the people you're talking about, and love all the people you're talking about, and have taken stuff from all of them. Yes. As they have taken from others,
Yeah.
And become them. I think that lick comes from either Kenny Burrell or I heard him or something. Right. You're upper tone from the root. You're up on the, so if it's E, you're playing F sharp, D, B, right? Yeah. And but I think that, and I tell the story in the book, but it's with Humble Pie, really, I was able to go everywhere and anywhere I wanted to go, and I felt like it was my apprenticeship, in as much as I'd spent all this time since I was 8 years old, listening to everybody and taking licks from everybody, and then playing, because you can play them, but it doesn't sound like them. It sounds like you, because you'll never be able to play like them. So then I got to, and it was the Frampton, I think of the Frampton album because I think of Rock On as Humble Pie, and Frampton they're both at the same stage in both of the careers,
Yeah, right.
But off Rock On, and I'd written the beginnings to the riff for Stone Cold Fever, and boom, 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 and then we all took it from there, and but when we recorded with Glenn Johns, it was almost like recording live, which was what was so great about the old days like that. And I came in once we got the take, and there's an extended solo at the end, or towards the end, and it's very freeform, and I go off, and I do a bit of what you just did there, I think. But I came in the control room. I didn't say anything to anybody, but I started to smile when I heard that solo, and I went, I think I've just become me.
Yeah.
I got chills right now.
Yeah,
thinking about it. All my hairs are standing up. But it was an epiphany.
Yeah.
Where I suddenly realized I've put it all together, and you can't say that's anybody else. That's me.
Yeah.
Finally, that's me. Fantastic. It's not me doing somebody else,
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was such a special moment for me. And I just felt that I have a style now. I think I really do have my own niche, and maybe recognizable. And then, my buddies have said, yeah, we only got to hear 2 or 3 notes from you and we know who it is.
Yeah,
so that's such a wonderful feeling to know that people can recognize me from my sound and
yeah,
my few notes, you know.
yeah. I think a lot of people are influenced by you. It's like there's I'd be interested to see how you conceive of this. There's a lot of stuff you're in and out of different things. And in fact, Rick Beato did a good job of that, talking about the scales you use.
Yes.
So he's saying, you know, sometimes it's Dorian, sometimes it's Mixolydian. And one thing I noticed, I don't think Rick Beato said it, but he knows what he's doing. But something that occurred to me: I've never heard any sort of blues guy, session guy, play that kind of rocking sort of music and do this one thing, which is to play whole scales. So, and what I mean from that, really, I don't mean just running scales like a classical,
right.
But I mean, what I take from that is you're so confident of the harmony, what fits, that you don't have to like find you don't have to bluff any of the areas. You know exactly where you're playing the whole scale. It's more of a harmonic statement in a lot of ways. So there's one line from Do You Feel? So that's going up D Mixolydian, which is, you know,
right.
your music college #1 scale for a dominant sound. And then you're coming with a blues. But, well, in fact, Rick Beato said as well, you're making the changes in the way that nobody really does that. I mean, one thing, I was checking out Little Wing recently, because I set some students the task of learning Little Wing. And even Jimi, who's one of the gods of music, when it comes to the C chords and the D chords, Jimi plays, he's playing out of the chord shape because it's so hard, and it's like, I don't know. You know, right. He's not thinking, I know what scale I can play, but you're all over it. It's like you do it. You don't run scales. I'm not implying you're way too classic, just playing up and down scales. But at that point, with those slipping, sliding things, it's a greater level of harmonic definition, and that's in my imagination, it's got to come from listening to jazz. You know, with adult chords, and you know.
Yeah,
I've never heard anybody do that. I don't think so.
Thank you. At this stage in my life, I listen to some of the new stuff, but basically, you know, in the morning when I come down for my coffee, it's either Miles or it's Django.
Right.
Or Herbie Hancock or Weather Report, or, you know, I mean, I just watched again with my brother. My brother came over. My son just got married in Los Angeles, and we went out there. He came over from England, my brother, and I said to him, because I had again another wake up when I watched the film Jocko. Have you seen it?
No.
The documentary?
No, I've seen a little bit of it, but not all of it.
And it's not the one him live, you know, it's just Jocko, those 4 letters. It's a wonderful, wonderful documentary. And it just opened my eyes and ears to something that he just floored me. But also, and on the instrumental album, Frampton Forgets the Words, we did Dreamland, because I can't do one of his fast ones, but Dreamland that he wrote with somebody else, Michael Colombier, who's also also passed away. It was very important to me that, and I went back to the drawing board like I was 12 years old again. And I sat down, I learned every note he played on that. You know, I put the time and effort into that.
Yeah.
And then just Rob Arthur, my keyboard player, and I called him up and I just said, look, I don't know what this is for. I just want to have fun and know that I can play this. Let's meet at my studio and let's put a click track and just the two of us, you play the chords and I'll play the lead, you know? And we did it in an afternoon, just the two of us. And we just thought, if we were just doing it for fun,
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then when we played it to the band, when we were doing Frampton Forgets the Words, everybody was floored, you know, we got to work on that. So I said, oh, good.
Yeah.
So that means so much. I would love to get hold of the son that is the play. I think it's Frederick. I'm not sure, but Jakov's son, and just make sure he knows that we did. I don't even need him to hear it. I just want him to know how much his father meant to all of us.
Yeah,
you know?
I'm sure he'd love it.
Even though he was bipolar and had a horrendous end to his life, but the genius that is there is when you hear one of those geniuses, it's like you're saying to me, how the hell did I do it? But there's a whole other level.
Well,
with Jaco.
I know what you're saying, but I mean the beauty. I mean, just talking to my missus before I came up, and man, baby, I love your way, for instance. I mean, that's such a. I love all those tunes, but that tune is one of my favorite songs. I've literally heard it easily a couple of thousand times.
Oh, yes.
You know, there's all those tunes. I love them all. It's just, yeah, that guy was a poet, an absolute poet.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the Wayne Shorter thing, isn't it? You know, it's something so idiosyncratic, and it's just a human thing, isn't it?
Well, those guys, when they played together with Pete Erskine, and Pete Erskine is in the documentary, and he really is the voice of reason. And you learn so much from him in this documentary.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. And, you know, it's just when someone has got that and he was in bands, you know, and he was just playing out in Florida. He was born in Florida, and then he had a baby, and he said to one of his closest friends, he said, I got to up my ante here because I've got to earn some money. So he said it. I think he said it to maybe it was Pete Erskine, but anyway, he just said, you won't see me for a while because I'm going to go away, and when I come back, I'm going to be the best bass player in the world. And he went away for a year, it seemed, and then he came back, and that's when he was walking behind Joe Zawinul. And he said, you got to listen to this. You got to listen to me. I'm the best bass player in the world. And Joe Zawinul said, go fuck yourself, you know? It's just so great, you know? Yeah. And then he brings him in to listen to his album that he'd done. And Joe Zawinul is just like, guys, this is our, and he tells the bass player that's with Weather Report at the time, yeah, this guy's great. And the guy with Weather Report is going, oh God, I don't belong.
Actually, yeah.
So he went off and played with Herbie Hancock. So
that's a terrible gig that is. Yeah,
that's terrible. Yeah. So, but anyway, it's just so. I know I'm spending all this time on.
No, at all. It's fantastic.
But he's so inspiring.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. That you have to watch this, even though it's sad at the end. But his genius shines throughout, and you see. Because he was bipolar, I think he was as good as he was. You know, I think that played into it. You know?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Peter Erskine's done a book, actually. You'd love it. Obviously, he talks a lot about that stuff, their friendship and all the stuff, you know. So it's worth reading. I think you'd love it.
Yeah, he hated the way Joe spoke to him because when he left Weather Report, he wanted Joe's, you know, yeah, that's good. You know, he wanted his... But every time after every session on his record, he would phone Joe up and play it over the phone to him. And he would say, that shit. You know, he would, because he could see that Joe was obviously a genius too, but he could see this young upstart was going to take over his reign, you know?
Yeah.
And there was an ego thing. When they would do this together, but then on stage, it was like an incredible conversation between the two of them. You know? Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. Let me just switch tack if you don't mind. I'm looking. Sorry, I look slightly different. I'm looking at my other screen over here.
That's okay.
I've got this transcription I did of "She Caught the Katy" from the Blues album. I love that album because I didn't know he'd done it, to be perfectly honest. And then I just asked Molly Marriott if she could maybe introduce me to you. And
Yes.
so I thought, well, I'd better see what this album's about. Oh man, it's so good. So here's another thing then. So we're talking about the jazz thing. So in terms of the out and out blues influence, because there's tons of that stuff in, I keep talking about Frampton comes on, but in all of your earlier and subsequent albums, it's all in there. But when you were younger, was that a huge bias in what you're doing, or were you more interested in just playing in a band, if you know what I mean, just finding your place in a band? Was there a time when there was a danger of you just going off and being a blues guy? Purely?
Never. No. I used my influences to, I would take it in, and like when Blues Breakers came out, oh God, that sound is so wonderful, and his playing is incredible. And then Cream, and then so in the end, it's so seductive, his style, obviously, especially with the Les Paul sound. I'm not a big Strat guy for him. I'm when they did the reunion before we lost Jack and Jimi, right?
Yeah.
He didn't use a Les Paul. He uses or a 335 or no humbuckers, and it didn't sound right to me.
Yeah, I know exactly.
But anyway, so that period of him was, I just wanted to, and the Herd. The Herd it's so funny. We were recording in the studio up in Bond Street called Rhymuse. And we were recording in the day, and Cream were recording Fresh Cream after us every night. He was the same engineer, so he was there all day and all night. And wow. I just couldn't believe that we were, because I rented a 50-watt Marshall head so that I could, and a cab, so I could have that sound, that I'd heard on Blues Breakers. And I didn't get it, but it was
sounded amazing.
Like me. Yeah, but yeah. Gosh, an early a 67 rented 50-watt Marshall head was bloody marvelous. You just whack it, you turn it all the way up, and then with the tone controls and link both channels. Yeah. And bingo, you had, the Blues Breakers sound,
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Anyway.
So, yeah, I didn't really, it was just I always listened to him, Eric, obviously. And I love his playing, and I got to play, finally, he invited me to play Crossroads in 2020, and we played While My Guitar Gently Weeps together, and it's a moment I will never forget, obviously, and it's on film. So, but which icing on the cake for something like that, it's just, you never think that's going to happen,
Sure.
But basically, the thing about the blues that I don't like is that everybody plays all the same exact licks. They play them, and everybody plays them slightly differently, but I don't want to play that.
Yeah.
You understand?
You don't. I'm looking.
I don't. Oh. Yeah. I mean, and I understand that, and I love to hear people play it.
Yeah.
But I don't want to play that. I want to play something that is maybe influenced by that lick, but it leads me to something else.
Yeah.
And I add something else in there. Yeah. And all of a sudden, it's my lick now, but it doesn't sound like one of those blues licks that everybody, it seems, has to play,
Yeah.
And I'm not putting down the blues. That's
not at all. Yeah.
Not at all. I love there's so many blues players that I can't get enough of, and even going all the way back to Robert Johnson, he sounds like three people playing there.
Oh man, yeah. I did a cover version of Kind Hearted Woman Blues. It was like I got booked to do this educational thing, and they said, can you do some Robert Johnson? We want you to do Kind Hearted Woman Blues. And I checked it out and I loved it, but I thought that's not my thing. And so I thought, what can I do? And I got Mike Finnigan. Do you know Mike Finnigan?
Oh, Mike is wonderful. Yes.
So, I mean, Mike passed away like,
yes,
so many months. I didn't know him well. He did that for me, just me and him, me on an acoustic guitar and Mike. And then he did a long version of All Along the Watchtower. A little snippet got released for this thing. But anyway, I did this version with Mike and I sort of rebuilt it. And that, it's a handful to try and fill that sonic kind of area. But Robert Johnson, yeah. I want to go back to the blues thing, but that acoustic thing on Penny for Your Thoughts on Frampton Comes Alive.
Yes.
I just went back and checked that. Oh man. This is really bad. You're making me feel terrible across the water. I really need to practice my acoustic as well. But looking at this solo anyway, talking about the blues thing, that's really evident. So it's like, even in your earlier style, I never really thought of it. I mean, I know people that are really sort of individuals. I used to be friendly with Brian May. I worked with him he did it like a West End show. And I tried the guitar part, so I worked on that with him and got to know him, and we got to be friends. I don't now and again I'll fire an email at him, but now there's a really individual guitar player like yourself. Yes. But I've never been aware of somebody that I've thought this guy really meant to not sound like anybody else, because the kind of music you played, you could have gone down that Clapton, all that stuff. All that sort of stuff, but you didn't. You never did it. So I've never heard somebody who it seems it's so evident that they thought, no, I love that, but I'm not doing it, which is what you've said you've done. But
yeah,
a lot of people might want to be original, but you're like, I'm just not having it. I'm not having it. I'm not letting myself do it. But there's some stuff in here. Let me just, if you don't mind me turning this drive pedal, I got a couple of lines in this thing. I got to pick your brain.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So I hope this isn't too loud. So, so it starts with that, and then you got the. You play this lick. This is so happening. Yeah. You jazzer, you. That's so. There's
some
amazing.
bebop in there.
It's amazing. And I love this. That's so happening. So what's that about? What happened? Where did that come
What happened there, Pete?
Seriously, what on earth do you think? Because that's poetry. That's so beautiful, but unexpected. I don't quite. It almost sounds like one of those kind of, the way that Pat Metheny does those sort of. Those kind of side 30 things. What do you make of that, Lee? You did it. What where does it come from? What do I need to listen to? How do I do it?
I don't know. The beauty of doing the all blues and Frampton Forgets the Words is that most of it, like 90% of both of those albums, I'm playing live solo with the band track going. That's it. You come in the control room, it's done. And then I might go out straight away and do 2 more solos, so that I know that I've covered any little glitches that I might have had on the live, but most of them are the live take that are better because I'm not thinking.
Yeah.
As soon as the band sits down and has lunch and I'm with the engineer or everybody's watching, there's a difference, but the big difference between one is playing with the band live and talking to them through the headset, so I can tell them where to go if I want to go somewhere else, which happened quite a bit. But there's something about playing with the band and hearing them light and shade come up and down with me like this and doing a fill with me and whatever, that you can't get that once the track's done and then you go and you overdub. Overdubbing is so difficult if it's not the same day, or it's not with, or it's just difficult, much more difficult, because now you're in a spot where it's not 1, 2, okay, we're recording, okay, let's go, 1, 2, 3, we're off. Everybody, we're a team. Now it's just the onus is on you to do the overdubs. I always get slightly withdrawn at that point. So I have to, like I think I do my best recorded solos now at home on my own, because I can make mistakes. I'm frightened of making a mistake in front of someone. You know what I mean? Yeah. Nobody wants to make a mistake. But while we're cutting the track, nobody cares, because it's just, but when it's just me and everybody's inquiring minds want to know.
But that's how Larry Carlton did most of those Steely Dan solos, isn't it? He did them in his home studio, or definitely a lot of them.
Yeah.
So I get that completely. I have to say your book is fantastic. But anybody who's watching this, please buy Peter's book. It reads like a mixture of what you'd expect it to be an autobiography of a great musician and an Elmore Leonard novel. With stuff. It's absolutely thrilling. I read half of it and then stopped because I was just working all the time. But it's a fantastic read. Listen, I don't want to take too much more of your time. I promised I wouldn't take more than an hour of your time. So I guess I should buzz off. Can I ask you one other thing that I was thinking?
Yes.
You lost your guitar, Phoenix. Were you aware of that affecting the way you play in any way? I mean, where you feel about playing when you had to go to another Les Paul?
Yes. I basically couldn't play on any other guitar to start with. It was so alien to me because that guitar is a bit of a Frankenstein and its neck is not like any other neck on any other guitar. It's even thinner than a 60 Les Paul, so because it was hand sanded by the Mark Mariana who gave it to me. And I found it very difficult. I mean, the first thing I went for, I went out to LA, Norm. I went to see Norm. And people that had 57 customs, which is basically what my guitar was, a 54 Black Beauty, which was then routed for 3 humbuckers. So it didn't start off like it was. So everyone thought that it was a 57. No, it's not. And then, of course, the 57 had the maple top. Right. It wasn't. I don't believe it was still all mahogany. Right. And the beauty of the Phoenix is it's all mahogany. There's no, and it doesn't have that very, very high top that I'm lucky enough to have a 60 Les Paul burst, and that has got this beautiful sound too. But it is, the Phoenix is, especially on the neck pickup, no matter whether it's a Seymour, a Tom Holmes, it doesn't matter. It always sounds exact. That's that Lines on My Face solo sound.
Yeah, right.
And it's still there.
Beautiful.
And it's just, there's certain songs that I'll have my 335 or my 60 Les Paul, and I'll play it and I go, no, this needs the Phoenix. It needs that neck pickup sound. It's just something unreal,
Yeah, that's just your voice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Peter, man, I better let you go. I want to do the right thing and not take too much of your time.
All right, well, good.
Thank you
We got to stay in touch, man.
Man, that would be such an honor. And I mean, a lot of people must say they love you. I mean, I wouldn't be here I mean, my wife through music. I wouldn't. It's a huge part of why I'm in the place I'm at. Your music.
Oh,
It's
thank you.
I'm beyond an honor. Thank you so much, and I've really loved taking this stuff down. I would love to see you again, but all the best.
Absolutely. No, I'm serious because maybe we can do this, and I can. Yeah, the thing is that because of my IBM, it's starting to affect my fingers. So, which is very unfortunate. Obviously, I've already gone back to eights now, which is what I did. What I was playing. The reason I played eights in the Herd and Humble Pie was because in one interview, Eric was asked, "What strings do you use?" And he says, "I use 8 through whatever, and they're piccato. They're made in Wales."
Yeah.
Yeah. So guess what? When we got the Phoenix back, and we went to eights because of my hands, I said, "Darren, call up piccato, see if they're still in." I've got all these piccatos, so I've gone completely for circle. I'm right back to where I was in the Herd and Humble Pie, and guess what? Kind of sounds more like that now, you know.
Right, I need to try it. I need to try it. You are.
I mean, they're horrible for players that are used to 10s or even 9s. You won't like it, but for me now, it's. You know, no one could play the Phoenix when I had the 8s on one in the old days. Oh, what have you got on here? These are like, you know, it's like rubber bands. I said, works for me.
Yeah, wow.
You know? And Eric.
Well, there you are. That's all you need to know, Peter. I'm Dever, you can face doing this again. I'm in in less than a heartbeat. And
you got it.
It's an honor.
All right.
All love, Peter. Here. Thank you,
Thank you so much.
See you again. All the best.
All righty.
Thank you,
fantastic.
mate. Bye.